Cool. Sound all good? Cool. Well, Jay, thank you very much for joining me on Headstrong.
Thank you for having me. This is, as I said before, this is the comfiest sofa that I've been on a podcast. So
I'm pleased that we're doing something right. My first question before we start is, well, first of all, I need to say Hamilton is joining us for the episode. We were just talking before we were filming, and I said he was going to be all very good, and now he's just wriggling around. But anyway,
the best thing for an algorithm is kids and animals. So there we go.
Fingers crossed. This is going to be the one. So my first question before we start. So you recently turned 39.
I did, yes.
So happy birthday. Belated happy birthday. You. But I wanted to ask you, how would you describe what you do as a job to somebody?
Joy, it's difficult because there's so many different avenues of it, and obviously, like, people, depending on what situation I'm in, and what I mean by situation, if I'm in a sauna, it's going to be very different to talking at a party or that. I have my pitch one, which is I just focus on leaving people better than when they found me. And that's a nice opening one, because that's just been my focus for the last 2 or 3 years, especially when it comes to content. You know, I've been on social media for over a decade now, and it's really matured and grown in the last 3 to 4 years, and it's just had that concept of putting out good stuff that makes people feel good, because as you know, with social media, not everyone has that intention, and it can be a toxic place. And my focus for that has been really, really good, because my DMs are good, the feedback that I get is generally good, and I think as well it plays well in the stuff that gets fed to me in the algorithm too. So I tend to say to people that I create things that help people with their health and happiness.
Love that.
I'll go with that one. Let's go with that one.
We'd specifically talk about kind of content creating, but you're a business owner as well. You're a podcast host. Probably most fundamentally, you're a father. Where does balance come into it? How do you balance life?
I think one of the hardest things to do with balance is knowing which end of each extreme there is. And the only way that you're going to know that is by taking it to that extreme, unfortunately. And you know, that extreme falls in between doing too much and not doing enough. And when it comes to business, when it comes to family, for me, it's all about priorities. And they've changed massively over the years. I would say 4 or 5 years ago, I was very kind of focused on business and growth, and that, like, my belief was coming at a sacrifice of those around me in order to get that. So when I get that, we can have a better life. And of course, that's wrong on so many levels. Should be focusing on spending time with the people that you care about, and then factoring in all the businessy stuff. And I think that's been a massive change for me now. I think the thing that people think about is that they'd rather work to live instead of live to work.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I'm in a very fortunate position that I can have that kind of balance to pick and choose what I want. But at the same time, I've worked very hard over the years to be able to have those opportunities. And that's come through lots of fuck ups and failures as well, of making the wrong things. But then that's where the balance has come from, because when you do too much, you realize, oh, okay, that's where that limit is, that's where that boundary is. And when I start thinking and feeling and sacrificing too much, that's normally a signal for me to ease my foot off the gas, which can be very hard for a lot of people to do.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I didn't mention in that kind of list of an array of things that you do is an author.
Yes.
You're a writer. And on the 29th of August, you have a book coming out.
I do indeed,
which is called Hard Stuff, Easy Life. Not your first book, not your first rodeo. Number 3 or 4?
It's number 3.
Number 3.
The trilogy.
The trilogy.
The trilogy, yeah. and yeah, I mean, it's one of the things about books, I think, one of the things that springs to mind, Reid Hoffman, who created LinkedIn, he said, if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you've launched too late. And I think a lot of people wait until the perfect time to write a book. The perfect time to write a book is now. And actually, that's the main thing. There's a lot of things I look back on my books, which have been great, but also I'm like, if I was to write that book again, it would be completely different. But this is, you know, it's not just chapters of the book, it's chapters of your life as well. At that time, that was the best of my knowledge in what I knew. So when it comes to evolving, it's nice to see things I thought about back then, things that I prioritized back then, and things that, of course, I prioritize now. And And really, the fundamentals are very similar through a lot of my books, but it's just the approach to doing things which is very, very different.
What's the approach to even starting to write a book? I mean, it's like over 250 pages, whatever book, books in general are. How do you approach that? Is it for you as a process? What does starting it look like? Do you collate your ideas and?
Yeah, I say so. I mean, a lot of things nowadays, people like lists, people like top 10s, top 5s.
Yeah.
They like those. And for me, with the Hard Stuff Easy Life book, it was it was 7 principles, 7 life principles, which I've got lots of life principles, but they were the ones that resonated the most over the last 3 to 4 years with my work. Ones that got the most engagement, one that got the most views and responses. So I kind of collated those 7 principles and put them into the book. So that's why I'm so excited, because I know that not only do these principles resonate with a lot of people, they're going to be very valuable for people too.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that, from watching you on social media, you're very good at structure, routine, and your non-negotiables. My question would be, is how easy do you think it is to turn something into habit and routine? Because something that you talk about is doing your ice baths, your ice plunges in the morning, which is a non-negotiable, I'm assuming, every day.
Yeah.
And so how easy is it? Or what is your suggestion on trying to make that happen? Or is it a matter of mental commitment?
I think one of the things that you're doing when it comes to, the whole book's Hard Stuff, Easy Life, and it's just this assumption that things are easy, or that things should be easy, that life should be easy. I think a great quote that I love from John Maxwell is that he had someone come up to him and say, "John, life is so hard," and his response was, "Compared to what?" And it was just this notion that people's assumption that life is meant to be easy, and it's not, it's meant to be difficult. But when you embrace difficult things, when you constantly have that narrative in your head of not wanting to do something, and then you are able to talk yourself around to do it anyway, you will have an easier life. And I think one of the biggest things that people struggle with is this avoidance to do the hard things. And this could be, and my cold plunge, of course, is a very extreme example. You need to find your own cold plunge. Your cold plunge might be just getting up 15 minutes earlier. Your cold plunge might be doing 10 push-ups. It's finding that thing that you really don't want to do, but you know that if you continued with it, it would change your life. And a lot of people say to me, well, there's no evidence to show that cold plunges do anything. And my response normally to that is, yeah, that's cool, but I feel amazing once I've done it. So if I can do something every day that I don't want to do, and when I've done it makes me feel great, isn't that the essence of what discipline is? And the reality is it is. But a lot of people say to me, is why or how are you so motivated, Jack? Like, I'm not motivated whatsoever. Motivation, it's a feeling. And when you're motivated, everything is easy. But when you rely on motivation to get things done, you won't get many things done. And discipline is very different because it's a thought process. It is that thought process of, I don't feel like I want to do it, but I know that if I do, I will feel better. And that is the essence of getting people to understand what everything in life is all about. That you are going to wake up, you are going to be presented choices. And if you choose to avoid those things, your life might be easy that day, but over time your life is going to get more and more and more difficult. But if you make that decision to go, do you know what, I don't want to do these things, but I'll do them anyway, weirdly, when compounded over time, your life becomes so much more fulfilling, happier, and of course easier too. So really, my cold plunge is about that negotiation that I have with myself every day of just not wanting to do that, hitting snooze, grabbing a drink after a busy day, maybe phoning a Domino's and having a pizza, and all of these stuff. And this is what the problem is: all these stuff sound amazing in the short term. So really, the whole cold plunge, the whole discipline, the whole hard stuff is about understanding that it's, these people that you see that do amazing things, they think exactly the same as you. The only difference with them is that they've made a decision to not act on that ease and to take the more difficult route.
With your cold plunges, yes, definitely, of course, they make you feel fantastic. Did you go in cold turkey? Like you went committed to that? I mean, I started taking cold showers, which is one of the stepping stones.
Yes,
of course.
100%.
But again, it's what, ultimately, I think having a cold shower in the morning, it's invigorating. It makes me feel in the moment, much more present. And actually, it's almost better than a coffee.
Yep,
for me,
100%.
And I just started making that into a routine, but then it's also so easy to be like, oh, maybe not today,
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing. I remember, I think it was October 2018, I was walking down the seafront and I saw a guy walking towards the sea. So I sat down on the wall and I was like, he's not getting there. He's not getting there, it's October. And then I saw him take his stuff off, go in there, and it was a perfect clear day. It was cold, but it was clear. And I was just watching how free he looked, and I was like, one day I'll do that. And it took me 4 months, 2019, to commit to doing a cold shower challenge. And that's where I started. It was a cold shower challenge, 30 days every single day. And the first day, hated it, didn't see the point. Second day, hated it, didn't see the point. 10th day, hated it, didn't see the point. Okay, let's just do 30, and obviously this is pointless. Day 14 got a little bit easier. Day 15 got a little bit easier. And I remember day 28 going for a swim, and there were showers in there, obviously shower before you go in. And one of these guys said to me, don't go in the shower because it's freezing cold. And I remember going in, him not knowing I was on day 28 of my challenge, and he looked at me like I was a psychopath. And I was like, okay, this does have some benefits. And then the final day, someone put me in a hotel because I was at an expo, and they had no hot water. And actually that really made my head click in something. I was just like, out of all of the places I could have stayed on my last cold shower day, it was probably the only time I was actually glad that the shower wasn't warm, because I needed to finish my cold shower challenge. And whilst I was having that cold shower with ease, because I've just done it 30 days in a row, I just thought, do you know what? I've just done something really difficult for 30 days, and actually that's made my life easier, because had I not done this, I would have probably been complaining, I'd have probably been stressed, and I'd probably been miserable going to bed because I'd just had a horrible cold shower. And it's that whole perspective. It's being able to deal with shit that life has thrown at you. And when you do embrace these things, it's like, yeah, whatever, it's all good.
I was listening, in prep for this, I was listening to one of your recent episodes, particularly about the things that you've learned in your 39 years, which you do every single birthday.
Yes.
You write things that you're grateful for, or that inspire you, or, all of the above.
Yeah, I basically, my notes on my phone is astronomical. I think I've got 12,800 notes over the last probably longer. But I create a folder every year, and anything that comes into my head, I write a note. And the week before my birthday, I go back to the year before and I go through each note, and that compiles that year's kind of things. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. But one of the things that I do is, once I've done it, I then look back to the last year's, but I don't do that until I've finished writing the next one.
Sure.
Because it's interesting to see if anything is the same or if certain things have changed.
And something that you talked about in that, which I thought was really, really struck a chord probably, it was where you said, we're also guilty of, and then kind of listed a couple of things like late night scrolling, which you can convert into, I don't know, reading a book, or not having your phone in the bedroom, things like that. What do you think are some quick hacks, so to speak, to improve your mindset and well-being? Something like that. I mean, there you go. Social media one, or not having the phone in the bedroom, is probably a good quick one to help improve, your life immensely, your sleep and all that. But is there anything that, you go, all right, don't obviously go in with ice baths immediately or ice plunges, but what's a good way to start?
I think James Clear said this in his book, Atomic Habits. He said you should make bad habits more difficult to do and you should make good habits easier to do. And when you set yourself up to make the things that you know are not good for your physical and mental wellness much more difficult to do, you add the friction to them, you do them a lot less. But if you make the easy things frictionless, or as frictionless as possible, then it's easier to become consistent. Some examples I'll give you of this is I try for years to stretch every morning. Everyone knows the power of stretching, and if you're over the age of 30 and you don't stretch, I don't know how you manage. But I was useless at it. And what I ended up doing was I ended up putting my stretching mat by my coffee machine, because there's one thing that I am the most consistent person in the world, and that's making a coffee every day. So to actually kind of stack that with it, it was kind of awkward that why would I had to step over this mat to have a coffee. So that actually signaled for me to stretch. And when I started the whole sea dips, which once again was something that if I look out and it's raining, I would go, not today. I'd go to sleep in my swimming trunks. So if I had that excuse, I'd look down and go, yeah, but why are you wearing them? We're already frictionless there. We're already signaling that something is important. And I think that is something that makes things easier. If you're wanting to go for a run in the morning, the hardest thing is when you wake up and you go, and it's this narrative of going, where's my socks? Where's my shoes? It's add the excuse not to get up, add the excuse not to get up. But if they're there soon by your bed, it's a lot frictionless, and it's trying to get over those excuses in your head, because everything that you are doing is convincing yourself to do or not do something. So you need to kind of stack the decks in your favor and make things as easy as possible. So that's something that I would say, look at the things that you want to get better at and look at ways to make it a lot more frictionless in order to do it. And if there are things which you want to do less of, which are bad habits, i.e. scrolling on social media, drinking alcohol, having crap food, it's very hard to do these things when you don't have the phone in the room, there's no beers in the fridge, and there's no shit food in the cupboard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everyone is hopefully all thinking it. What's that ice plunge like on Christmas Day?
Oh, magical. Actually, I don't do the ice bath on Christmas Day. It's always a sea dip.
Okay.
Always a sea dip. Christmas sea dip is the best.
Nice.
So, yeah. But I think one of the things with any kind of cold therapy is the more people that do it with you, the better it is.
Yeah.
The easier it is.
Well, it's that kind of herd mentality of like, well, if X is doing it,
100%.
But everyone needs that. I mean, that's how the human mind is built. We thrive off that.
Yeah.
It's not even competitive. It's like, oh God, if he's doing it, I'm gonna.
Which is this community, it's this accountability, and something that I say is that we'll let ourselves down every day, but then we have an imagination in our head of how we want to be portrayed by others. So if that portrayal is, kind of like, oh, they're going to think I'm this or that, you end up doing more things. A great example that's really helped me is for the last 18 months I've been doing jiu-jitsu at 6 o'clock in the morning. And once again, firstly, jiu-jitsu, very difficult to do. Secondly, even more difficult to do at 6 a.m. But there's a group of kind of 4 or 5 of us that go consistently. And you've got to book on the night before. Well, at least I book in the night before, because I know that those guys are looking in to see who else is turning up. And if your name is there, but then you don't turn up the next day, even in my head, I feel like I'm letting others down, which makes me go anyway. And sometimes I'll come back from London really late, say 11:30. Probably would be good to get a bit more sleep. But I'm just like, do you know what would even be better? I've had a stressful day. I missed the gym the day before. Let's try not to get my arm broken by some fully grown men at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So yeah, it's that accountability and leaning on other people that really helps you get more stuff done.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's really interesting hearing you talk, but to understand how you've grown this mindset as well. I mean, we've got to understand a bit more context about your childhood and like understand you. So when did you first become aware of your own mental health growing up?
I would honestly say that I was kind of very naive and stubborn about it until my 30s, I would say.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I was a very hyperactive kid. I joined the military at 17. I was in the army for 7 years, came out. Was very kind of focused and I was a bit of a little shit when I was younger. So for me, I think when I have a path and a purpose and a direction, a lot of that stress and overwhelm goes down. I think it is the same with a lot of people. One of my favorite books is by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, and it's called Psycho-Cybernetics. And he weirdly says that people are like bikes. He says when they are stationary, they're very wobbly. But when they have momentum and movement, they're easier to steer. And I very much, when I feel that my mental health is being affected, it's normally because I'm that wobbly bike. It's normally because I haven't set goals, I haven't been given some momentum, and I've got too much uncertainty in my life. And I think that's where, when I start getting these feelings of anxiety, of overwhelm, of stress, a lot of it is there is too much uncertainty in my life. I'm not planning out my goals. I'm not getting my routines right. And that's always been my thing. Whenever something gets disrupted, so I'm coming up to London a lot more now, routines are disrupted. It's a lot of uncertainty, but then it's a case of going, okay, cool. As long as I've got a gym, as long as I've got some food, as long as I've got things to go to in different places, that stress, anxiety, and overwhelm comes down. And I think that's kind of the real awareness for me that a lot of people need to be more in tune with their emotions and what anxiety actually feels like, what exactly overwhelm feels like, what stress feels like, because there's all these triggers around us. And one of the mistakes that I made 2019 was not listening to them, thinking I could just push through. And your body and your mind has a funny way of reminding you that if you ignore these signs, it won't get easier, it'll get worse.
I mean, you mentioned it just briefly then as well, but in terms of fitness and maybe maintaining your well-being, have you always been obsessed, or not obsessed, but done fitness, and it's always been a healthy part of your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 13 is when I started going to the gym.
Yeah.
And it's because I was probably going to get expelled from school. And the school had an idea to let some of the naughty kids go and train in the gym at 13. And that's where I kind of took to it, because all of this built up energy that I had was actually being channeled into the gym.
Yeah.
And actually, that's probably the best thing that happened to me, because once again, you've got something that you can make a commitment to and that focus. And once again, seeing that progress, it's that kind of thing of going, okay, if I keep going and keep doing this, and that, the gym really helped me.
Yeah, without even knowing it, like, it was almost like that was the savior at that point, I suppose. Or at least, as you say, you had a goal or a vision, something to channel your energy into to look after your mental health.
Yeah, 100%.
Without knowing it.
Yeah, 100%. And then, of course, that's 13, and then 17. I remember finishing 2 years of college, only getting the first year, and not really doing much with that. And then suddenly having this whole, what do I do now? And that was where, right, you kind of got two options now. You're pretty much drinking every weekend, as a 17-year-old does.
Yeah.
Or at least where they did around where I live. And it was just like, you got an option. This is going down the wrong path, and you're fit, you enjoy your training. I know you don't want to, but the army's kind of a good direction to go, and that's where.
So it was never a goal when you were growing up to be in the army?
No, not whatsoever. I remember doing some work experience there in my teens, but I think my takeaway from that was never join the army. And it's weird. It's weird how these things have a funny way of kind of directing you, because you don't think that decision at 17 does it, is a big thing. But it puts you on a path to so many things. And, when I think about moving on, say 26, 27, I got made redundant from my job, and I was like, right, okay, what to do now? And it was like, get pen and paper out, write down what are you good at? I've been writing meal plans and training programs for people online. You should be a PT. And I was like, no, that's kind of okay. And then I asked myself, well, why didn't you do this in the past? And it's just like, I remember coming back from the army and seeing a lot of these personal trainers in the gyms miserable.
Sure.
So I had always associated, training people with this misery, because I was like, right, I really enjoy the gym, but if I did it as a job, I might end up resenting that as a job. And once again, you don't know these things until you explore it. And as soon as I became a PT, that was it. I was just like, okay, that is my thing. That is the path that I was on. And in hindsight, you wonder where these things come from. And once again, these thought processes, and something that I say in the book of going, if you're honest about where you are and where you've decided not to go, or you've had reservations around, there'll be things there, there'll be signals if you look at it. And it's a case of exploring those things. I said with the gym, it's like realizing that what stopped me is the dissatisfaction in other people's faces, not the satisfaction in my own.
Yeah, for sure. Getting into the army, what is that process like? I mean, to me, that seems like something completely alien. What was that application process and acceptance process like?
Yeah, horrendous. I think it took about 8 months. I had a load of fitness tests, load of medicals, and then all of a sudden, that's it. You're going, here's your date, here's your train tickets, off you go.
And you were quite anxious about leaving home, weren't you?
I threw up 2 or 3 times on the train because I was 17, never been away from home, never done anything like this before, didn't know where I was going. I just had train tickets to go halfway up the country, and I know I was going to be there for 12 weeks and my life's going to change. So, a very scary time. But once again, you look back now and you think, well, actually, probably the best thing that ever happened to expose yourself to that uncertainty and new things and people and ways of doing things at such a young age.
Do you think the army is the place where you kind of learnt and indeed respected what routine stands for?
Yeah, 100%.
Discipline as well.
Yeah, one of the things that interests me about discipline back in the army, and it's something that I say now, is discipline is doing things regardless of how you feel. Pretty much everything that you have to do in the army you don't want to do. But if you get it done, your life becomes easier because once it's done, you don't have to do much. So just get the shit out of the way first, and then you can relax. So it was actually teaching us discipline, but just in a very different way, because a lot of the stuff that we were doing, we didn't want to do, but our lives got easier if we did it. And a lot of the things that you do in the army don't really serve that much benefit to yourself, nor other people. But then, of course, when you're disciplining yourself to do stuff, of course, the return is in yourself. So, it taught me discipline, routines, habits. Integrity, I think, is a very important one as well. Looking after the people around you, and I think that whole trust thing. I think one of the things when I left the army was that when you're in, you feel as if everyone's got your back, but then when you leave, everyone's, no one's got your back, and everyone's just looking after themselves. So that was a real different kind of wake-up call, really. And that's one thing I always look back in the army, that you had those people around you that you could trust and rely on, because you're kind of in the ship together.
When you were training in the army, is there something that you reflect on that and you were like, oh, that really was tough? Like, is there any kind of particular story that you can remember that was really challenging?
Yes. Really challenging.
Be that an actual kind of like some piece of training, or was it actually learning that discipline? The elongated challenge of maximizing that, or did it actually was one of those things of because everyone was doing it, it made it easier?
I think the most challenging thing is spending a long time away from your routine. So I was in Canada for 6 months. I was in Baghdad, Iraq for six months. And once again, I think one of the things when you do these things from a young age, and you especially going on operational tour, firstly, you don't know if you're coming back, and secondly, you learn how to appreciate very simple things like phone. This was 2008, and that was back in the time where you check Facebook once a week and get 3 notifications. So good old days. Yeah. And it's just you learn to appreciate very simple things. And I think going on in my life, I've very much talk about just being grateful for very simple things, but if you've never really been in a position where they have been taken away, or places where you've spent a long time away from them, you can't really get into the mindset of missing them. And I think actually that's changed a lot. And the reason that's changed is because of COVID, because people spent more or less 6 months to a year of not having things that they wanted, not being, a lot of people used to tune into my sea dips because they were living in London, and although they might not have seen the sea for 5 years because it was available whenever, but now it was taken away from them. They were like, oh, you're so lucky to live by the sea. And I think gratitude is such an important practice for people on a daily basis, to condition their minds to just appreciate those very simple things.
Are you a believer in if you work hard enough, you will achieve
it? It depends on what it is that you're working on. I think one of the things is that there's a lot of luck that is involved with success. And it comes back to that quote, the harder that you work, the luckier you get. And I think when it comes to working hard on specific things, you just increase your opportunities in that area. And that doesn't necessarily mean that guarantees success. It just increases your chances of it happening. And I think if you combine that with a love of what it is that you're doing, then you pretty much stack the decks in your favor. An example I'll give of this is that a lot of people a lot of people's dreams is to earn tens of thousands of pounds in ad revenue being a YouTuber. I think that's pretty much, if you ask any school kid these days what they want to be when they grow up, I think the second most popular is a YouTuber. But the people who are making money from YouTube started 8 to 10 years ago, and if they didn't have to earn a single penny for the rest of time, and you were to ask them what they would do with their day, they'd probably be making and editing videos. And I think that's when we talk about working hard on something that you enjoy doing that actually creates that success. So, of course, there are people that probably worked incredibly hard for things and have not achieved success. But I think it's a thing that, once again, the harder that you work with something that you enjoy, the more chances that you have of that becoming a success.
When you achieve something, for example, when you started your gym and you opened it, that's a huge success. But are you someone, or do you think it's common practice now to go, great, I've done that, now what next? 100%. It's important to take a moment, right, and actually celebrate those, quite frankly, enormous achievements, right?
Yeah.
But we're so quick and eager in this world to kind of, I think it's probably comes from a place of comparison, going, well, let's get on to the next thing now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are more excited about the journey than the destination. And it's one of those things that you realize, and it's something I talk about when it comes to happiness in the book. And the real difference is conditional happiness and unconditional happiness. And we see a lot of people are focused on, when I have this thing, when I do this stuff, I'll be happy. And one of the reasons that people say, what next, is because they realize that thing that they've been working hard on is not the answer. That didn't make them happy. Because we get used to things, this whole hedonic adaptation. People aspire to have a very nice sports car. They have the sports car, they drive the sports car, and then 6 months later it becomes the car. And then somebody else has a nicer car, and then that then becomes the aspiration. And I think this is one of the biggest issues, is that people are searching for material items to achieve certain internal emotions. And I'm like, well, that's what's fucked up in you, because you are constantly seeking something that doesn't equate to that. So it's learning to understand what happiness is. And it's like, happiness can be something that is unconditional. It is something that you can wake up every day, and it's a skill which you can build by being able to realize some of the things that actually are the real reasons that we're doing this thing called life. And that is having good people around you, doing things that you enjoy, challenging yourself to do things. And actually they are things which everybody can program in their life and have. And what happens is, when you are happy with doing these things, the things that you actually want from life end up becoming the things that you actually get. And life has a very funny way of doing that, because a lot lot of times when I've achieved things, it hasn't come through stress, anxiety and everything. It tends to come from when I'm on holiday relaxing, or when I'm in the shower not thinking about that thing. When I'm relaxed and I'm allowing my brain and my body to think and feel the way it should be doing. So that's very much what I say to people, is like they're stressing themselves to get an outcome. And the only thing that you're actually doing is conditioning your body to be constantly stressed in order to achieve something that you could have right now.
So just before you came in, I was talking to somebody who was talking about, I asked them, what do you think is one of the biggest problems with mental health in kind of society at the moment? And she said that it's the fact that we split mental health and physical health, and that she just thinks it should just be health. You know, there's this opportunity for conversation where it's like, why are we separating them? And for you, yes, of course, there are obviously different strands of what mental health and physical health looks like. But for you, fitness and working on your physical health hugely benefits your mental health, and it's a non-negotiable, right?
Yeah. But it's understanding that what you think and what you do are two different things. And I always say transformation starts from the neck up. You get your head right and everything else follows. But it's surprising how good your head feels when you sweat. Yeah, it's that release of endorphins, it's that feel good, it's everything there. And they do work hand in hand with each other. You know, a lot of the things that your body is telling you, your brain is, for a great example, I was speaking to somebody who had hurt their back, and they said they spent ages on the sofa not doing anything. And I said, well, a rested muscle doesn't get stronger. And actually, if you want to recover your back, it's not from doing nothing with it. It's from removing it and helping with recovery and that. So that's very counterintuitive in your head, that pain being a signal to stop, instead of actually going, well, actually no, I need to. Of course, this is not fighting through the pain, it's working through a kind of a pain threshold. So once again, life is very counterintuitive. So they do work hand in hand, but normally what your body needs, your brain tells you it doesn't. So it is developing that relationship sometimes of actually just saying to your brain, shut the fuck up. Because if my brain had its way, I'd never jump in that cold plunge.
Yeah, for sure.
My body knows that if I do, that I'm going to feel great. And then weirdly, I have this kind of thing that I say first brain and the second brain says, I told you so. So yeah, it's developing that relationship.
I mean, you've got this kind of mindset where you can ultimately, I think, as you say, it's discipline. You get yourself to a point where it's like, right now, exactly, I told you so. And that's the same with a number of physical feats that you've achieved in your life. Yeah. From backwards running, pushing sleds. But I think the box jump of Everest is absolutely mental.
Yeah.
What was that like the 48 hours after?
Yeah, painful, yeah. Yeah, my wife actually took me shopping as well. I don't know, she's
Is that savage?
Yeah, she's like, hey, be all right. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where...
Do you have to have something like that to kind of aim towards? Or do you find it helps you? What's the kind of... And obviously there's the charitable element, and that's obviously naturally a huge benefit and motivating factor. But what is it that makes you want to do these things?
I think one of the main things is, well, firstly, a lot of people don't think that these things are possible. And once again, a lot of people don't believe that they can do these amazing things. And this all stemmed from my first charity event, which was pushing a sled for 24 hours. And that initial charity event basically started as a 6-man team. So we were going to do 2 hours and rotate as a 6-man team. So we do 4 hours in 24 hours. And I just remember sitting there thinking, don't say it. And then I was like, I'm going to do it by myself. And I had this massive heart palpitation of going, what are you doing? And trained for 6 weeks and of course managed to do it. And I was just like, wow, 6 weeks ago, I didn't think that was humanly possible. And I've just done it. And it just opened up the doors of what other things were possible. And it was just developing this relationship with, once again, with my body and brain. And this narrative, which then led to the backwards run. And once again, having this narrative in your head of your brain saying to stop and you're going to hurt yourself and we're going to shut down now to protect you. And then you kind of then telling your body, no, you've got plenty more in the tank. And I always try to wonder what that was until I listened to David Goggins' first book, and he's talked about it being the 40% rule. And what he said is that when you feel that you're at 100% and you can't go anymore, you're actually at only 40%. So it's these mental models that you get from exposing yourself to these things. And you don't know what you're truly made of until you put yourself in these situations.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible and beautiful place to be. And any ultra marathon runner or anyone who's done anything, you know, crazy, shall we say, knows exactly what that kind of thought process is. And it's a very weird, lonely place, but it's also a very beautiful thing when you're able to, you know, pull things from the depths of yourself to achieve stuff. So yeah, I don't like. It's been a while since I've done one. So the last
that
one,
was going to be my next question.
Yeah, I do have one that I want. Well, firstly, like the first thing is thinking about it, and this I've told a few people, and the next one I'm not revealing what it is, but it's going to be the biggest one that I've ever done, and the timing has to be right because it's going to take a while to do, shall we say?
An endurance.
It will be, yeah, it will be an endurance one. It'd be the longest and biggest one I've ever challenged myself to do, and I was planning to do it for my 40th next year, but we will see.
Yeah.
It needs a good year of training just to build up the capacity to do it. So it's once again trying to find the time to do that with everything else, because it does have to be. These events do have to be a full-time job, and with juggling everything, it's like I can't be that selfish at the moment.
Yeah,
because I need to be a lot selfless for other people at the moment.
For sure. So that's on the extreme of what your goal setting is potentially. What would you say to somebody, or what advice would you give to somebody to set realistic and achievable goals to kind of get their mindset back on track or to improve it?
I think when it comes to anything, you're building up confidence, and confidence is basically doing things to build up evidence that you're able to achieve stuff. And that evidence can be done by lots of things, and it's doing those things that you didn't want to do but did them anyway. And they can be as simple as getting up early. It can be as simple as making a commitment to get 10,000 steps in a day. It could even be drinking 2 liters of water every day. You're getting small wins every single day, and that's what kind of builds up that confidence. One of the reasons that a lot of people don't start is because they try and do everything straight away. So they're like, right, I need to go to the gym, I need to eat healthy, I need to do this, I need to do that. I'm like, well, focus on one. And Charles Duhigg speaks about this in his book, The Power of Habit. He talks about keystone habits. And the way that I kind of explain them is that it's like a domino. So you find the domino that knocks all the other dominoes over. Most people, that's say exercise or steps, because when you're going to the gym consistently, let's say 3 times a week, it's a lot easier to eat healthier food because you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm building this body. I want to fuel it with the right stuff. And then when you fuel it with the right stuff, you tend to drink a lot more water. You're like, okay, cool, I'm feeling pretty tired now. I'm going to get more sleep. And it's all these compound effects of just focusing on that one thing. So I'd say to people, find that thing. Whether it's committing to going to the gym 3 times a week, whether it's making a step commitment, and give yourself that challenge of time. We go back to the cold shower challenge. Had I made a commitment to do a cold shower every day, I would have failed in that because I couldn't keep consistent with it. Had I made a 10-day challenge, I probably would have got to the end of those 10 days and gone, this was pointless. But because I made that those 30 days, I built up enough evidence to show myself that was worth doing. And 30 days seems to be that kind of thing. I mean, if you went to the gym 3 times a week for 30 days, you're going to notice a difference. If you walk 10,000 steps a day for 30 days, you're going to look and feel the difference. And if you start eating healthy for 30 days, you're definitely going to see a difference. And that's all we're doing, is just building up that evidence, that thing that we don't want to do right now. it actually is the thing that we do want to do.
For sure. What piece of advice would you give to somebody who is struggling with their mental health and who is scared or afraid to reach out?
The strongest thing to do is ask for help. I think one of the things that stops people is, especially guys, is this don't want to seem weak and that I don't want to bother people. I think it's a very English thing. It's like, I'm going through a lot right now, but I didn't want to bother anyone. And I think one of the things is firstly, you're not bothering anyone. Secondly, you're giving others a disservice by not talking about your problems, because pretty much 1 in 3 people have mental health problems or have had mental health problems in their time. So actually, you being that vulnerable person who says that you're struggling might be helping somebody else too. And actually, that's what tends to happen when you do open up, be vulnerable, talk about your emotions, talk about the things that you struggle with. Some of the responses that you'll get from others is thank you. And actually then you find that you're not the only person struggling. And this seems to be one big thing, is that people think that everybody else around them isn't struggling. And the reason for that is because they go on Instagram, they scroll up and they see a highlight reel of what everybody else wants you to think that they are looking like and feeling like. So conversation's key. If you're struggling with mental health, I would say limit your social media time and increase your actual physical time with people. Because it's very hard. It's very easy to mask your emotions and feelings online, but it's very easy to mask your emotions online, but it's very hard to mask your emotions in person.
Yeah.
So spend more time with people.
Jay, I really enjoyed this. The final question that I ask everybody is, what does the word headstrong mean to you?
What does the word headstrong mean to me? Being able to navigate life by listening to that voice that is very quiet in your head, because there's a louder voice telling you not to do things. But if you listen long enough, you tell that loud voice to shut up, it's there. And it gets a little bit louder each time that you do things that you don't want to do. And that is all the things that I said. It is getting up early, it's exercising, it's eating healthy. It's all the common sense things that we know that aren't common practice. But the more that you do them, the stronger that your head is going to be, because you're building up that evidence that you're capable of doing those things.
Amazing. Jay, thank you very much. Hugely appreciate it. And I hope you managed to get home safe on the train.
What I say, Hamilton is a legendary podcast.
He's done well, hasn't he?
That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I'm very surprised. There we go. That's a wrap.